Well, hello everybody. Good morning from a very chilly South Africa. I got to tell you, today is a lot warmer, but my word, have we frozen this past week. And I'm very happy to welcome back with me lovely Kerri Saint from Australia down under, talking again about, well, as you guys know, and in case you don't know yet, Kerri is a regular on the show, talking about adoptions and the dark side of adoptions, which very often go hand in hand with trafficking, SRA, um, disgusting things like that. So if you haven't watched our previous interviews with Kerri, I want to highly recommend and suggest that you do, because there's some crucial information there. She's a great advocate for the adoptees and adoptive parents. I guess you can call adoptives, right? Adoptees. I don't know what the word is, but anyway, you know what I mean. In Australia, is doing great work there. But before I'm going to hand over to Kerri. I want to just say we've got our awesome sponsor on today's show again, who is Spooky 2, frequency medicine. Guys, these little machines are amazing. They are the home use Rife machines, so to speak, and a whole array of amazing products using frequency medicine. You get from the teeny tiny ones, which is one that I have, and that my mom, wow, this thing has been an amazing, honestly, it's a little Myramate that she has. It's an amazing little, um, I suppose you could call it a mini Rife machine, right? That you literally clip on and you can put the um, parts where you need it. And it's amazing. And then they've got the different sizes as well. But anyway, check it out. Their website will be, I think, I do believe it's here, and we're going to be playing an ad later. And also use the coupon code Chantelle, as in the way my name is spelled, Chantelle, and then you'll get your 5% discount from them. So I highly recommend that you guys check that out. You know, these are such incredible alternatives to allopathic medicine. And really, there are so many incredible testimonies that people are using nowadays, using frequencies, natural medicine, stuff that's really working in harmony with the body. Um, so check it out. And on that note, I'm going to welcome beautiful Kerri Saint back to Aquarius Rising. How are you, Kerri?
I'm good. How's yourself?
I'm
I'm
great,
good.
thank you. How's the
Yeah.
weather there? What's happening in Australia?
Well, the weather's absolutely beautiful at the moment. I love this time of year. A bit chilly in the mornings, but the days are just absolutely gorgeous. We haven't had much rain for a little while, but we got flooded out a while ago, so it's nice to have some really sunshine, fresh days. And I've been out on my kayak fishing on the local river. Not that I've caught anything, just been out paddling on the river down where I live, and it's absolutely gorgeous down there. So I live in a small country town, so there aren't too many people here for most of the part. So I live in a really beautiful part of the country, and behind me I've got all state forest, and can go for walks through the state forest. We've got a massive big dam, and through all the droughts that we had here, we were never dry. So I'm just really grateful to live in a really beautiful part of the country, and I'm enjoying this really cool weather. I got cold the last interview we had; it was really cold, but it's actually quite nice at the moment. So I like that.
Well, we just had the longest night, or of the year, which was the
Yeah,
21st. And it
yeah.
was such a crazy. That day was definitely the coldest day of the year
Oh,
by far. Wow, it was such a crazy day that. But anyway, we claiming our sun back from you Northerners. Give it back immediately.
Though I'm saying it's beautiful at the moment, I bet you by the next interview, I'll probably be cursing it because I'll be freezing cold and can't get warm. So, we're human, we
Exactly.
try and get everything, but I'm enjoying it at the moment. So this is
Yeah,
really lovely. Yeah, yeah.
indeed. Indeed.
Mm,
Anyway, so yeah, we've obviously had a few very interesting chats in the past, Kerri, about, the adoptees and like really the underbelly of that world. We've spoken a lot about even you, Grant. I
yes.
left him a message. He answered me. He wasn't happy
Hugh
with me.
Jackman, you mean? Hugh
I mean,
Jackman.
yeah, not you, Grant, you, Jackman. Sorry, you, Grant. Although who knows where you are, what you're up to.
Poor old Hugh
Nowadays,
Grant has got
we
hot
can't be too sure about anything, right? I
yeah,
mean, he did
that's
get up to
right.
dodgy shenanigans in the back of a car, didn't he?
That's
Yes,
right.
I remember that. He
Yeah, I
was all up
do.
in
Yeah.
someone's car with the lady of the night.
Yeah, 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 yeah. They all
How
get up,
funny.
seem to get. They all seem to get up to some sort of shenanigans, but
Yeah,
poor old Hugh. Yeah, but yeah, it was
absolutely.
Hugh Jackman and Deborah Furness because they kind of run an organisation called Adopt Change and have done a lot of lobbying here with our politicians because of who he is, a Hollywood movie star. He's able to make inroads and accomplish things to have more children taken from their biological families and adopted out. So, I'm not happy about it. A lot of people aren't happy about it. However, the good news is that they have not accomplished the plans in which they really wanted to achieve here in Australia, which is the same style adoption as in the States. Get a child very quickly within a 9-month period, get rid of a lot of uh, the screening processes and the hoops and the jumps that potential adoptive parents have to go to. So, and I put that down to the fact that Australia has been in a really unique position that the mothers in particular that had their children's taken between the 1960s and 1980s through forced adoption really lobbied hard and really pushed and made known their trauma of adoption. And then in 2010, adoptees like myself became involved in a Senate inquiry and let our feelings be known about how adoption has affected us and the adverse effects and trauma. So, and out of that came federal and state apologies. So Australia is the only country at this stage has really gone to those lengths to try and put right the past wrongs around forced adoption. There's still a great deal of work that needs to be done. However, it's in that unique position where it's done that. So there are less children that are adopted. So I've actually found some stats on it. So basically up to, what was it, 1970s, there was something like up to 10,000 children a year adopted in Australia, which when you apply that to the amount of people that actually lived in Australia at the time, that's an enormous amount of children that were taken. And we're down to about 208 children a year now that are adopted. So you think about that. So in 2022, where the stats were shown, it's about 208 children adopted over the whole of Australia, whereas up into probably about the mid 1970s, we were looking at 9,000 children a year on average were adopted in Australia.
Wow.
However, yeah, which is great. So there's been a 98% decrease of children adopted in Australia,
Wow.
and which is completely different to United States and other countries.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing. That
yeah,
it's, that
yeah.
it's, yeah,
And
that it's,
I put that down
I want to
to
just ask you that. What do you
yeah.
think is the reason that's happening? Why do you think that's down in Australia to that extent? I mean, 98% is
Decrease.
huge.
Yeah, 98% decrease. So I
Yeah.
put it down to a number of things. The fact that here in Australia, we have what's known as the single mother's benefit. So,
Yeah.
like if you have a baby, so financially, um, you're not basically disadvantaged by choosing to bring a child up on your own. If you're young and you're single, or even aged and single, which does happen, you're not, because a lot of women and a lot of like the third world countries in America, you're targeted because you only get welfare to a certain level, especially in the States. In other third world countries, you get no welfare, right? So if you're supported, and it's not a huge amount of money, but it's enough to support you and your child. And we also have a lot of community services that come in and help, that might be with food and furniture and housing. So our whole social structure is based on, trying to keep families together. And that shouldn't be a crime to be poor, and it shouldn't be a crime to be a single parent. So we've got that in place, but also we've got such a horrific history through our stolen generation, our Indigenous brothers and sisters who were stolen as children and farmed out to orphanages and also adopted. So they understand the trauma based on that alone. And then we have our appalling history of the forgotten Australians, how we took in the children from mostly England who came out here in the orphanages and were horrifically abused. So all of these groups of people, including people like myself who come from forced adoption, have been quite vocal in the trauma of being separated from biological family. So that has created an understanding that it's more important to try and work with families and keep them together. And I'd
Yeah.
say those components altogether um, equate to the fact now that there are far fewer adoptions. And when we had adoptions at such peak levels, society's changed. Back then, illegitimacy was such a huge shadow over people, and the fact that illegitimate children were not seen as having any legal rights. So that's why they took a lot of the children and put them with married couples to give them some sort of legal standing. So, and now, like, children are born every day. Thousands of children are born every day outside of marriage and not seen in that light. Every child is seen as having some form of legal standing. So these are the components that have changed. Whereas United States, their welfare system is completely different to ours. You don't have the supports in place like you do here in Australia. And you definitely don't have adoptees being able to have a voice, and the mothers being able to have a voice like they do. I know there's a lot of movement and a lot of push, and some states in America are having some wins and getting their original birth certificates and other things, but I vow declared you'll probably never ever see the day that America will ever apologise for their atrocious and appalling crimes against mother and child. I know Ireland has looked at it. I know England has looked at it, and I know Canada as well. But America's probably the worst country you could ever, and look at in the total way of how many kids are taken. And I can give you some states that are. So basically, there are 4.5 million adopted children in the United States. This equates to 54,000 children taken for adoption every year. 55% of those children are adopted by a foster parent, 34% are adopted by a relative, and 11% are adopted to strangers. And 29% of those are children 9 years and younger. Um, and the average, so here in Australia, only in New South Wales at this point, there is money being exchanged for children being adopted. It goes to non-government agencies. So they pay about $38,000 to move a child from foster care to adoption. So any child that's procured for adoption, an NGO can get anything up to $38,000, but no money is given to the mother or baby brokers. And that's something we don't have here in the United States. they have what they call baby brokers, and they average 125 children every year that they can manage to adopt out. So they broker between an adoption agency or the biological parents and the adopted parents, and each child can bring in about $25,000 to $30,000 each. So being a baby broker in America can earn you a lot of money.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
so
So
yeah,
yeah, wow. I'm astounded. And as you're saying, it's looking at all the countries are looking at these things now, but it's interesting that America isn't. Just as we're
no,
sitting here, I think I should actually look at statistics here as well. But it's so difficult to find true statistics in South Africa because so much of the stuff is happening like in rural areas as well. And more we're hearing. I mean, I did an interview with a woman called Pixie Pink not too long ago. I mean, this woman is incredible what she's doing for
mm,
kids that are being abandoned and abused and in the worst possible ways. I mean,
mm,
kids literally are
yeah,
being born at home, bred at home. There's literally no registration, and they get sold
mm,
to lawyers and things. I mean, these
yeah,
high class, please, there's nothing high class about that. But the upper echelon, who've got the
yes,
money and they've all got these pedophilic tendencies,
mm,
and it's insane. So there's so much that goes on underneath the surfaces, over here.
yeah,
What the statistics we get are most definitely not the
mm,
true, or the statistics released rather, would definitely not be the true
correct,
statistics.
yeah,
I mean, I saw this horrific video clip yesterday, I think. Morné, actually, in fact, I think sent it to me. Now, where they're mining in the Congo. Guys,
yes,
for, is it, what is that? Gosh. Ah, I can't think of the mineral's name now. But they mine it, and it's all about electric cars and smartphones,
yeah,
right?
yes, yes,
There
yes,
are women and children mining there in the most
mm,
horrific conditions, so everyone can have their iPhones, guys, and not just the iPhones, all of this technology. Children are being brought in bags. Their mothers are putting them in bags, giving them to traffickers, and the money is being exchanged right there. This is what's happening in the Congo.
mm.
So it is absolutely horrific what's happening here. It is horrific. And this, of
I
course,
can,
would be,
yeah. I'm so I just have a really hard time comprehending because I'm a mum myself. I'm sorry if I'm not.
exactly,
I'm trying not to get upset about what you
yeah,
said, but how I'm going to get upset over what you just said. Um, I just cannot comprehend a mother handing over her child like that. Um, and it just shows how
dehumanized.
broken, yeah, um, humans are at this point, to the fact that for their own self preservation, they will sell a child knowingly that this child will, something will horrendously happen to it. My brain cannot comprehend that at all, in the essence of, I've lost a child. He was 17. The death of that child, and thinking that he may have suffered in any shape, way, or form in the brief moments when he died, kind of haunts me all the time. I have to constantly work at,
Yeah,
not thinking about it, hope and the circumstance which he died was a really freak accident. But to think that, little babies who are so vulnerable, stuffed in a bag, handed to just anybody, is is just absolutely diabolical and despicable and doesn't have any words. I
And
can't.
it's what they said was that sometimes they'd get stopped on the way by whoever it was, authorities or whatever, saying, "What's the child doing in the bag?" And they'd say, "No, the child is being punished." So they would say, "No, this is the child's punishment for being bad or whatever." And but then they would soon cotton on these kids never came back type thing, right? So I mean, how tragic is that? That
Mm,
these kids are being, and obviously they've been set to work in the mines as well,
mm,
because it's all child mining
yeah,
and women,
yeah,
and in the most horrific, horrific conditions. These little, little
yeah,
things carrying these huge, heavy loads
mm,
and having these guys in uniform watching over them. I mean, it's just on another
mm,
level, right?
mm,
It's
yeah,
just on another level. It's
mm,
tragic, guys. We've got a lot of work to do on this
yeah.
planet, that's for sure. When
I
we
think
look at
I think that a large majority of humans have lost the understanding of the value of another life, and to me, that really hit home during COVID, and what hospitals were willing to do to garner more money to the elderly on in their respirators to hasten the death of people because they got paid. I think it was something like $35,000 for each person that died, or each person was put on a ventilator. That's it, which ultimately resulted in death. Um, yeah, human life has little value or no value in the eyes of a lot of people, and that to me is a really scary place for this world to be in when we do that. I mean, when we would send men off to war, and and where Australia has its own history of Gallipoli and just sending the Aussie men's over the top to just be shot when there was no hope of getting, to the other side. But now they're doing it to babies, like, just sending babies out to be slaughtered and used and abused in some way that shows you how far down we've fallen in the respect to human life. And it's sickening.
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. But again, when we're looking at the element that governs this planet right now, it ain't human, and
No.
that's the reality of the situation. And this is what we've got to. I mean, as far fetched and as what I mean, like sci-fi movie it might sound like.
Mm,
This is what's really happening. And
mm,
as long as we remain blind and ignorant to what's going on and expect someone else to take care of it,
mm.
um, that's how long we're going to be in this situation.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I mean, if anybody wants to pay note to the fact, what I said in the very beginning was that we went from having almost 10, up to 10,000 options every year up in the early 1970s. Now we're down to 208 here in Australia because victims rose up and had a voice and
Yeah,
lobbied, and wrote books, spoke out, educated, and did. Is it ideal? Our situation in Australia, no, but comparison to some other countries, we do far better. So, if there are any victims or any survivors of forced adoption listening to this, whether you live in Australia or not, your voice really matters. You might think that you're the only one, but you're not. And that it's really good to connect with other survivors and have an open voice and speak openly about the traumas of adoption and separation of family and do whatever you can. Um,
yeah, indeed.
it's so important. So, I mean, you may not do a great deal in changing what happened to you as a child, but you can certainly, by your voice, protect the children of tomorrow and today from falling to the same fate. So, um,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, we wanted to have a chat about rehoming and what that actually means. So, I'll pick on America because this is the one that basically, unfortunately, has this problem more than anything.
Sorry, America, we love you. Mwah,
Oh
mwah.
yeah, no, oh look,
Okay,
I
I want
don't.
to just tell you, I have to tell you, every now and again, sorry to interrupt you, but just on that,
Yeah,
on that note, every now and again, you get a really crazy person.
and
The other morning, I wake up and I mean, obviously I'm on Telegram and stuff like this, and then there's this message from this person who I've never in my life seen, but it's about this long, and maybe 10 of them
yeah,
crapping on me from a dizzy height, demanding that I explain to her why South Africa is siding with Russia against America. She likes South Africans, and this is unacceptable. I mean, I have no idea who this person is or was, but I got lambasted from every area because South Africa's siding with Russia. I'm like, I said, just please, just leave me alone. I don't have time for
it
this.
must be cool to be seen that you have that much power, Chantelle.
What the hell? And then when I read it again, I had to laugh. And it's like when it's the first thing you see in the morning when you wake up, I'm like, who is this crazy lunatic?
Oh no.
Anyway,
Oh
sorry about that. I
well,
had to
that's
bring
all
that
right.
in.
Like, and
It
that's
was
true.
funny.
I mean, we have our limited superpowers, and I've in the past had people think that I can do enormous things or answer things, and you know, I try my best, but there are things outside of my control, and you just do your best with what you've got. But yeah, I don't think I've had anything as crazy as that, but I certainly had some
I was
weird.
called a racist this week as well.
You
I'm
what?
like a racist. I'm a racist as well. I was about
Oh,
two people.
really? Oh, I
Yeah, I'm a
am too.
racist.
Didn't you know
And
that?
I'm a racist, and I got that basted from every angle for being a
Oh,
racist,
you're
and then
kidding.
and then I've now got a lot to do with South Africa siding with Russia.
Oh, wow.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right. Well,
Anyway,
maybe it's your fault for the rehoming too, Chantal.
I'm sure I'm sure I must have had a lot to do with that as well. But anyway,
Oh. So, oh, how we came on it last time. I know what I was talking about. I brought up about when my adoptive mother would threaten to send me to a home for unwanted children if I stepped out of line, I didn't do what I was told. And it was a pretty horrid place to be. Imagine being sent to where I'd be chained to the bed, fed bread and water, have rats crawl all over me, be beaten every day, and be stripped naked. This was the picture that was painted of me to where I would go because I was an unwanted child. Because that's what you said. This is where all unwanted children go. You're disposable. We can get rid of you. Nobody else wanted you, and so that held me in bondage. The gay for like I didn't realize how much that affected me even to my adult life. So I became much of a people pleaser and never said no much to anybody for that fear of being rejected and sent away. Often I'd have an argument with my husband, like we all do, and I immediately thought I was going to be rejected and sent away. So it plays
that must
absolute.
be quite something to come to terms with. I mean, I
Yeah.
think just in a normal circumstance of adoption, that's in any event challenging. But
Mm.
especially when you've been abused and tortured and broken down mentally, emotionally, physically, and made to really feel like you are less than nothing. How do
Yes.
you, I mean, just as a matter of interest, how did you bounce back from that? Just you personally. I mean, that must have taken, and as you say, because in your marriage, I mean, the fact that you guys actually marry is a miracle to me. I must be very
Mm,
honest. The fact that you're even willing to have anyone, even as much as touch a hair on your head after something like that, is a miracle
mm,
to me.
yeah.
So, and especially when you now, and I'm sure that these types of relationships, right, can get quite codependent because your fear of being abandoned or rejected is so huge that you're
Mm,
either going to go into complete fight or flight syndrome, right? Where you're
yeah.
going to completely withdraw or
Mm,
reject long before you can get rejected, or you're going to maybe get very aggressive, maybe needy,
mm,
jealous, argumentative, stuff like that, right? So you'd look
mm,
at one of those two kind of.
mm. It's probably a whole big subject on its own, Chantelle, but because for me, like I'd blanked out all my abuse. So I kind of didn't have, it's hard to explain, and maybe it's something you'd like to cover at some stage, but I managed to block out all the abuse. So I'm not using it as a reference point to kind of pick a partner. I think all I could think of was he doesn't hit me, right? But I wasn't seeing all of the other things that he brought with him, and I didn't see that I was marrying somebody who reinforced the the having no value as a person. I didn't see that. It wasn't until I started having the flashbacks and I started to slowly work through each trauma that I then began to see that my marriage was not what I thought it was, and that I had brought a whole heap of stuff to it and I was reacting to that I didn't know. And
Mm,
um, he came with his own issues and his own problems, because people like that tend to draw like to like. And so I worked really, really hard on myself to work through it. And the biggest one was trying to work on the sense of value for myself. Why am I here? Why do I want to be here? What sort of value system do I want to impart to my children? And do I want a better life than the one that was given to me? And all of it comes in stages. It doesn't all come at once. It will come in these small stages and increments. And you only grow as much as you're willing to face your trauma. You're not going to grow unless you're willing to deep dive in and really tear it apart. And it's really, really painful and really scary at times. I think it's really important to have some good supports around you. They don't have to be your partner or husband, but people who get what you're going through. And, you know, I've forgotten the question you were at, but it's like, it's hard work, Chantelle. It really was hard work. Um, and I I latched on to like finding God in my life and understanding what He told me about myself and choosing to believe that. It's and I think everybody finds their own way of getting through. That was what I did, and I learnt more by doing that about who I am and how I'm valued in the eyes of God, not valued by human beings. Because if I place myself
absolutely.
on what my value is by human beings, I'm I'm constantly going to run into people that tell me I'm not worth anything. Every day I'll run into people who have an opinion about me or see me in a certain light and will project that towards me. Thank you so much. Yes, I just
Ah,
saw
that's what
that.
I'm smiling at. Sorry. It's like absolutely. So as you were
Yes,
saying that, it's like, thank you for
yes.
that, Layla. I presume that's what it is, Layla. Saint by name, saint by nature. Exactly. So,
That's
and as
beautiful.
you were
Thank
saying that, I had to put that up there as you were talking about,
Yes,
how others value or how you see that, right? And there
yes,
you go.
yes,
So
yes.
that's
So,
really what it is. I mean,
yeah.
it's I mean, it's I think I've always maintained this, and I always will. And I believe every person needs to worship or pray or whatever it is they do in the way that feels right for them, as long as you are not hurting anyone. In my opinion,
Mm.
you're entitled to your belief system.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that the only way to get through stuff like this is honestly through connecting to spirit,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Um, that spiritual intelligence, once it's, I always say spiritual intelligence versus artificial intelligence. Spiritual intelligence will always win. Can't
Yes.
not win.
Mm.
But it's not even that. I just kind of say that. But because it's such an all encompassing knowledge, it's a feeling, it's an understanding. And when you reach that place of awareness, it's like everything just melts away.
Yeah.
All the pain
Mm.
melts away. The experience doesn't melt away. Not
No.
even God can change the past, but
No.
the perception around it
Mm.
changes.
Yes.
So, the healing occurs and you can now see the scar, but you certainly don't remember the wound anymore. You
Mm.
might remember
Yes.
visually, but it's
Yeah.
not actually hurting your heart anymore.
Mm. No.
That's the difference. And
Mm.
that is
Oh,
really,
definitely.
when it comes to this type of healing, um, uh, I truly believe
Mm.
that uh, spiritual healing and connection is the
Mm.
only authentic way to
Yeah.
heal. And as you say, to understand your worth as a human, to understand how you are valued, and then to translate that into the world in which you're living in is
Yes.
so important, because
Yeah.
it's so easy to get caught up in that victim trap.
Mm.
Very easy. And gosh, when you look at some of the things that some people have been through,
Mm.
as I said, I don't even know how any of you let anyone touch a hair on your head.
Mm.
I'd be living in a cage. No one is coming near me after that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Not that
Yes.
I'd be doing myself any good, but I
Yeah.
mean, I think you get the picture of what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's to trust again after
Mm.
that, to learn, these basic human emotions, which someone like yourself has never been taught as a child. You
No.
didn't know what it was like to trust. You didn't know what it was like to have daddy love you and
Mm.
nurture you. And the same with it was all cruelty. It was
Yeah.
all abuse. It was
Yeah.
all fear and torture.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's like the backwards bicycle. One of the survivors actually, and I know we've posted it before at one of Jesse's
Mm.
shows. He sent me a picture, and I don't know if Morné can find it, maybe, of the backwards
Yeah.
bicycle. And it's like everything is backwards. And it's, if you guys can watch that thing, it made such perfect sense to me, because when he sent it to me, he
Mm.
says, we've been programmed in the back, we're like the backwards bicycle. And now
Mm.
trying to ride forward in this world of civilians that are normal,
Mm.
nothing adjusts.
Yeah.
So to understand that everything you guys have been through is reversed or
Mm.
inverted
Yeah.
to what truth is. So to
Yes.
try and reverse out of that and move into a space of love and
Mm.
caring and trust again.
Yes. Yeah.
For anyone, I mean, you ask any girl who's just had her heart broken 3 times, I'll never trust a man again.
Yeah. Yes.
What's
Yes.
that? Is
Thanks,
that the
Morné.
backwards
Yeah.
bicycle? Okay. But
Yeah.
can we see how it works more now? I think there's a video. There's like a little video where you can actually see how it works. So yeah, and I think, we're doing this thing with Alice Parola as well, who's also been victimized by a pedophile father and was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, because literally coming from childhood traumas. So, I think and it's just really about debunking these mental labels that we give each other or give
Yes.
ourselves, you know.
Yes.
It's really caused through trauma. So
Yeah.
when we understand the trauma from which the person comes from, it's not so easy to label them as this or
Oh,
that or whatever.
definitely. Yeah,
It's really
definitely.
understanding where, and I don't even know, there should be no labels about that, in my opinion, but I guess we're always
No,
going to do that.
no.
But yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, the answer is hard work and making choices to not believe the lies and the lies about yourself and who you are and where you come from. And, so, I challenge things within my marriage and I challenge things within myself, my own thinking, and, um, the beauty about that was that I then didn't repeat those same mistakes with my children. I broke the cycle with my children, and I have two beautiful grandkids, and it's really beautiful to actually see that that they love freely, express freely, and have my grandchildren have the most gorgeous relationship with their mum and dad. They're there for them, and I look at them and I'm so proud because I know that I broke the cycle so that my daughter became the most beautiful mother to her two children. And that's, what you couldn't ask for more. Like the
I
chances.
that's so amazing. That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Just in terms of you breaking that cycle, and that is really. And just before we actually start, we're going to just stop for an ad break here for a minute. But I just wanted to say that just before we stop, it's really this is why I say you guys are the true healers because you've been through that experience, you've come out of it, you can forgive, you have compassion, you
Mm,
break the cycle, not just for your daughter and her children, but the entire offspring of what could have been, right?
yes.
And that also heals the past as well. Because if you
Mm,
look at you healing your situation, automatically you're healing ancestral
mm,
bloodlines as well, right? Because it stops there, this
yes.
whole thing is just one pain
Mm,
experience after the other. So
yes.
anyway, okay, we want to just stop for a quick ad break here with Spooky 2. We'll be back in a minute, guys.
In 2013, Spooky released Spooky 2 to the world. 10 years is a long time to change many things, but customer first has steadfastly remained our creed. Spooky 2 has released more than 10 products, bringing health to over 100,000 families.
Well, I'm much better with the Spooky 2. Well, I have an XM and I have a Gen X also. Going between detox and pain relief, I'll just go over to the Spooky 2 and just dial in the pain relief for for gallbladder colic and things, and it takes it away immediately. This is drug-free. It's an amazing piece of equipment.
I have used the Spooky to help with my eyes, and I've had good luck with that. A couple of months ago, I lived in an area that got flooded. I went in a hole. So I got back to the house, and I sat for 2 hours, and when I got up, I could hardly move my leg. And I hurried and went in, and I got my foot all hooked up. And I also sleep with the scaler. The next morning I got up and it was like my feet hit the floor and I was like, okay. And I had no issue. It was amazing to me that how much that really did help me and just was fine.
We have established a high quality brand and put great effort into serving our customers. We have done our best to deliver our customers the safest, happiest, and most satisfying experience. We have built a bridge between customers and ourselves. Spooky 2 is entering more families, allowing a greater number of people leave their sufferings behind. The world is bound together with love. Spooky will continue to spread love wherever we go.
Cool. And if anyone wants to look into that, don't forget to use my name, Chantelle, as a coupon code for a 5% discount. That's John White on there. John's the guy with the no hair. He's New Zealand, actually. And
Okay.
he's living in China now. And I know it wasn't him that created it, but he does a lot of stuff with that. And guys, if you haven't actually watched our interview and you're interested in this, I highly recommend. We did an interview with John White, Fact 2, a little while ago, where he explains, and that they have such an incredible normal Chinese herbs that they put together, and he was talking about and just giving advice on certain things, and literally reversing aging. And I'm not talking about the aesthetic vain aging, right? I'm talking about um, uh, body disease in the body, pain in the body, premature aging. These things, when we take it with mindset as well as the natural products, they actually balance everything again, and it's incredible to see the results. So I'm all for that. Anyway, okay, sorry, Kerri,
Better
over to
plug
you
me
again. Yeah.
in. Rehoming. So if anybody wants to check out, you can still YouTube. I know you're here in Australia. You can still find it. It's a 60-minute story that was done a few years back about rehoming, and it actually shows you the children in a hall on a stage, sort of like parading themselves as if they were models up and down to potential adoptive parents, and it's really sickening to watch.
Yeah.
The girls have got makeup on, they're walking hands on their hips, flinging their hair back. And it covered two stories in particular about a young fellow called Frankie who was 14. And he had a fellow there, I think it's Tony. He was a 52-year-old single white man. And he was there to view Frankie, who's a 14-year-old African-American boy. And so they kind of have a meet and greet. And he must have been advertised for Tony to go there. So he's advertised on the web. Tony goes there. He's 52, single white man. Why would you want to adopt a 14-year-old teenage boy? I don't know. And so he ends up going off with Tony, but it doesn't end up working out. And Tony drops him back off, kind of basically saying they're incompatible. So this poor young boy is rejected yet again.
And I think that was, and I remember seeing that, and I know we briefly spoke about this topic on one of our previous conversations. It is just disgusting. And as you say, in this like community hall or something, it's all dodgy in there anyway.
Yes.
And you see these kids modeling, literally modeling, as you say, wearing makeup and swinging her hips and doing whatever, walking up and down a carpet for people, prospective adoptive parents, so they can be rehomed. I do not know how this is even legal, because I saw that, and I actually mentioned that to Jessie at the time that I saw that, which is a while ago, and she didn't even know this was going on.
Oh,
I'm
really?
like, how is this even possible that this stuff is happening?
Yes. Well, it's not. There's no court orders, and there's no checks, and there's no vetting, no real vetting, and no legal or social structures around it. And children can knowingly and unknowingly be placed with pedophiles, in the sex slave trade, to murderers, and just monsters. And
mostly are, no doubt. Mostly are. I mean, like, hello. Oh, gosh.
So they covered a story about a young girl called Poppy who was adopted originally, but then at 7 she was rehomed, and there was this couple called the Easons, if I'm pretty right, Easons, and they met up in a chat group with other potential adoptive parents or adoptive parents, and they had fake social worker letters recommending them for adoption, and they happened to get young Poppy and also another young boy, and then they disappear. And their motor operandum, what they would do was they would do this, take children, abuse them and then rehome them. So poor Poppy at 7 was exposed to pornography. She was forced to watch pornography. She was sexually abused by this 6 foot something high adoptive father. Both of them would walk around naked, and the place was in squalor. And she ended up being rescued because there was another woman who had kind of come across the Easons and then come across Megan, who was a woman that introduced poor old Poppy to the Easons and got her adopted by the Easons. So Megan actually went in search of young Poppy to try and rectify what had happened. And when she showed up, she was absolutely appalled at how Poppy and this other young boy was living, and she got them out. And she ended up adopting Poppy, and the Easons ended up getting 40 years jail for what they did. They had their, I don't know if it was him, but I know that the mother, this Eason woman, had her own children who were taken from her from the department for abuse. But she could go and get a child who's advertised on a website and create a fake social worker letter, take a child and do that to it, and that child could have been murdered. If she had been murdered and her body disposed of, it would have been very hard to convict her of that. She could have just said the child ran away. I know of other cases where this happened with children, and again, same sort of thing. The adoptive parents didn't want the child anymore. It was a young girl. I know she was about 13, was adopted to a man who then took her, and she was never seen of again. Now, he was found, but the child was never found. So, and I would say very much that children are being traded. So they might be picked up by supposedly look like adoptive parents, but then are traded for sex trafficking or wherever. So when you consider that, 11% of the 4.5 million children that are adopted in the United States, or the 54,000 every year, 11% of those go to perfect strangers. And how many of those are actually rehomed? They reckon that it's estimated that 24,000 foreign children are no longer with their first adopted parent. So you have children that are coming in from different countries, and the same thing is happening. And the biggest exposure with that was Romania, when Ceausescu was in power, and he had those orphanages, and he was basically making it impossible for parents not to have children, and it was really poor, and the country really badly affected, and the parents couldn't afford to feed their children, were putting them in these orphanages where the children were being horrifically neglected and abused. And of course, when Ceausescu was assassinated, there were Western countries that came in to rescue these children, and adopted them out overseas. But the children were so damaged by what they went through, the adoptive parents couldn't cope with them. So they were sending these children off to secret farms, particularly in America. And so you don't hear about that, but that's what happened.
What secret farms were these? What were they doing on these farms?
Well, they were just hiding the children. They were just hiding them and keeping them out of, the public eye that this had happened. And so when Romania found out, they actually stopped the adoptions of their children leaving the country. There was a very famous case about one particular Russian boy, I think it was, a Romanian boy, he got sent back because he ended up being abused by his adoptive parents. But a lot of these kids come with a lot of trauma, but and behavioural issues and such. They're sold off to the adoptive parents as kids with no issues, and that's the problem. There's a lot of adoptive parents get these kids thinking that they can everything's got to be hunky-dory, let's just give them love. You have any child that's been rejected by their biological parents, or having to be pulled away, that separation from the biological mother in particular and father creates all sorts of dramas for that child. And yes, and like you said, how did I get to even trust a man in my life to marry? Could you imagine if I had been abused by my adoptive parents, sent off to a home or an orphanage, abused, and then they rehome me with other adoptive parents? I don't think that would have turned out very well either. It probably would have been a lot worse for me. How could I ever trust any adult in my life at that point? So,
Exactly.
and this is what's
Exactly.
happening. These children are ending up in abusive situations with, and I'd like to say their adopted parents, they do it for all the right reasons, but because they're not educated and trained and given the resources to cope, and they're lied to by the countries or the baby brokers or whatever, they're getting broken children and expecting to have a child that's going to adjust really well to, suburban life with other children in the family. And you've got children that are effectively, bashing in walls, screaming, unable to attend school, are sick all the time, maybe harming other children, threatening to kill you, the parent. Like, this is what occurs. So a lot of
Mhm.
the adoptive parents, because they can't get the help and support, um, feel that they cannot help this child. So in their way, a lot of them kind of go, well, maybe that child deserves a better parent than myself. So they go through these baby brokers and they hand the child over to a stranger who's come along with nefarious motives and takes that damaged child and does even worse. It's absolutely horrendous to think that it's not regulated, that anybody can do it, that there's baby brokers making horrendous amounts of money in trading in children. It's child
I
trafficking.
was about to say, a baby broker. What a
Yes,
disgusting word. And I was going to say, it really is. It's child trade. It's human trade.
yes,
It's
yes.
baby trade. The baby trade. You may as well call it the baby trade because that's
Yeah,
really
and
what it
it's
is.
sanctioned by your government. It's
Yeah.
sanctioned by your state. It's sanctioned by your authorities. It's sanctioned by society. And, I'm absolutely appalled by it. I mean, I'm appalled that if just in New South Wales alone, they're paying NGOs $38,000, to procure a child for adoption. I don't think any money should change hands for a child. Nothing. Diddly squat.
No. I mean, absolutely. I think, look, there's something to be saying about paying a foster family. I agree, but as we can tell by that, there's so many dodgy foster families out there who do it for the money. So there's obviously a lot
Yeah,
of loopholes around there. Unless that system is tied up very quickly, that's also not working. But if a parent wants to adopt a child, they must be financially secure. And there
correct.
should be certain transactions that have to go through, yes, certain court, whatever. So
Yeah.
the cost should be minimal. There should not be anyone that is now doing this and
Profiting.
doing. It is like absolutely shocking to me that people think that is okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Kerri, it's more and more coming to the fore what's happening
Yeah.
on this planet, and it ain't pretty. And I
Yes.
think we're going to see a lot more
Definitely.
horrible things that our children have had to go through.
Yes.
Um, so we really need to actually, I keep saying this to our viewers, we've got to prepare ourselves. Um, Many of us think we are prepared. We do.
Mm. Yeah.
Until something happens that you actually need to look out for someone, help someone, take
Mm.
care, then
Mm.
we'll see how ill prepared most of us are. I see this in my
Yes.
community. Honestly, it's
Yes.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
people are living in
And
a
even
beautiful
if people,
future.
I was going to say that, you know, um, we got this kind of adage around dogs, like when people sell dogs, and it's like, well, if I put a lot of money on it, I know the owner it's going to look after it. And I think they seem to have the same opinion when it comes to humans adopting children. And last time you interviewed, there was that story of the young Asian girl who was adopted and then abused, killed by her adoptive mother, right? I can't remember her name, but I covered that.
Funny name.
They paid a lot of money to get that child just to end up killing her and they were deemed as being, like high society, lots of money. And unfortunately,
that's usually the problem.
Correct.
And
so it's not about whether you're financially able to adopt, because they're still, with their financial able, they still abuse and kill and murder and sexually abuse because they have this sense of entitlement to this child to do whatever I like. Right? To this child. It's mine. I paid for it. I can do what I like. Unfortunately,
it's like an object. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that's exactly, think about this. That's how the Luciferian system works.
Oh.
These are flippant, because it's like this soul is mine. It was gifted to me. It is mine. You are not getting it back. It's like a demonic way of dealing with souls that you've bought.
Yes.
And it's the same sort of thing that happens. Yeah, that's my child. I paid money for it, and I'll do what I want with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, doesn't that just show us what a sad state our world still is in? And this is why when we see things like this, we realize we've got a very, very far way to go before we actually transcend. That's for sure. We're in trouble, actually.
Yeah.
When this stuff goes on.
And actually looking into rehoming, I actually found out that it's forbidden in the Islamic law to adopt, which I was like, wow, because I was looking at different countries and they don't adopt, they sponsor a child. And I think, okay, maybe, because I hate the word adoption. I'm sorry, who is ever listening. Jeez, the word adoption is very traumatic for me and very traumatic for many. And we've been trying to find out a way how we can, what word we can use to move children into homes where they're loved and give it a terminology that's not adoption. Because to me, the word adoption is no different than institution. And we know what happened in institutions. So every time people like myself hear the word adoption and it's in the media or whatever, it is traumatic for us because we're having to be faced with that continual narrative around adoption and saviors when we know, and I know, it's not always that.
Especially when you're seeing the headlines, adopted boy's parents buy him a birthday cake.
Oh, I saw that. Oh.
Crazy, right? Like this child must be eternally grateful that these parents are so rubbish. I'm sorry. I get it. It's the same thing as saying my dog's a rescue. You keep telling your dog's not a rescue. The dog probably rescued you. You the rescue, not the dog.
Yeah.
The child's not adopted. The child adopted you. You actually adopted the adoptee. You should be bloody lucky.
Yeah. And for people that don't understand adoption and birthdays, and it's very hard for adoptees to celebrate their birthday because that tends to be the day that they were ripped away from their biological mother and family at birth. And so we have a lot of grief around our birthdays, and we often don't want to celebrate it because that's the day we were taken and placed with somebody else. And so adoptive parents don't get that bit, and a lot of adoptees have to pretend to enjoy their birthday. So for the newspaper to even put it in the news, that sends a big message to someone like myself. It's like, you need to celebrate being taken and sold off to your rescuers.
And now somebody loves you. Woohoo. You get to have, I find that very condescending, I must say.
And they have in the States, they have Gotcha Day. You ever heard that? A Gotcha Day?
No, what's Gotcha Day?
Gotcha Day. That's the day that they celebrate the child was adopted. So they celebrate it. So you know, same sort of concept. Like, unless that child's in the process to go, yes, I want to be adopted and I agree to this and I understand
Yes,
what it
I
all
agree.
means.
And there's the child, and if the child has had a really cool experience, some adoptive parents are really cool. I mean, I know, my friend, they're Indian, and
Okay.
for a long story short, um, they couldn't conceive. So after a long time, now I don't know if it's the same anywhere else, but in South Africa, Indian babies, they are like you cannot adopt them.
Mm.
They are
Yeah.
just not up for adoption because you'll usually find the Indian families, if there's any kind of um, accident, someone in the family adopts the child. That's usually what
Okay.
happens.
Yeah.
So you don't often find them. Anyway, and they're quite strong Hindu, and they really would have loved to have like an Indian baby, um, although they were open to anything else. So
Yeah.
after a long hullabaloo, they actually went to the agency and just had a talk to the woman. And I mean, she's one of my really good friends and a healer as well. And I just said, you got to do this.
Mm.
And they hadn't even signed or put in any application. They literally were thinking about it. And the woman called them the next day and she said, you need to come and put in your application. There's a baby that's becoming available. Um, and told the story of the baby. And that baby, her and her husband's birthdays are like 3 days apart. This baby was born in the middle of their birthdays.
Mm.
And immediately, without even a question, they did it, and they were able to get the little baby girl. She looks exactly like them. It is the craziest thing, and it is the
Mm.
most beautiful adoptive story that
Yeah.
I know, because there really are families out there who would do anything to have a
Mm.
child. And I
Mm.
know how long, when you look, for example, at a family like that who's spent so long praying for a baby. And then I remember her, we were out somewhere one day, and this woman had this baby with her, irritated, smoking and drinking with a baby on the hip. And I mean,
Mm.
she was beside herself. She just said,
Mm.
does that mom know how happy and how grateful she can be for that child? So,
Mm.
from the other side, you get that where there's these people who are really wanting children, and there's something that they really just can't conceive, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
they see this abuse going on in normal families. It's
Yeah.
horrifying for them,
Yeah. Yeah.
as well. So there are beautiful stories out there of
Mm.
amazing families. And I mean, the little
Yeah.
girl, she knows she's adopted. They've spoken about it. It's not a problem.
Mm.
She's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm good friends with the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
So there are those amazing stories as well that
Yeah.
of people that are really good. And I think,
Mm.
there are those very lucky children and lucky parents, right?
Yeah.
Not just one, both.
Correct.
Because
Yes.
in a situation like that, it's such a beautiful match. And you
Yes.
kind of know that's a match made in heaven, so to
Yeah.
speak. God
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
brought that family together. So I think
Mm.
there's that, and, must celebrate those as well because they are
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. 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 There definitely is a need for children to be loved by adults who are willing to be the child's parents.
Yeah.
It's just getting rid of all the rubbish that goes on that makes it so nefarious, and there needs to be this whole support around the family that does adopt, because there will be issues that will arise, and it's technically not the same as raising your own biological child. That child's going to come with a whole set of different needs,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
a good adoptive parent will absolutely recognize that and value that, and and embrace that. And that can only make for a beautiful and healthy relationship for all of them. But when that's not supported and none of the pain is recognized, and everything's swashed under the carpet, and you're made to feel as if you need to be grateful for being adopted, that's when it becomes very difficult for all parties. And I think that's a huge problem in America, because adoption is painted as in such a particular way that it fools potential adoptive parents who thinking it's all going to be hunky-dory. And it isn't, because the child will come with issues. And when they can't deal with it and they can't get the help they need, they then resort to, this child, we can't keep this child. So the child is passed off, and this is a really sad place to be, because even though I'm against adoption, I'm very clear in the fact that I know that there are some very beautiful adopted parents out there, and people who would make beautiful parents to children who don't have them. But we need to sort out the rubbish in amongst it, And if anybody is an adoptive parent, educate yourself, talk to adoptees, because by talking to us, you can only enhance and help the child in which you have in your care.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. I think there's so much to be learnt, for both people. And, and I think just because a family wants a child doesn't mean they are good parents.
Correct.
Very often, speaking about my friend, I mean, after years and years of trying to fall pregnant, right? Within 4 months, she was a mom. So you can imagine within there was no time as well to get pregnant, get the hormones and, all of that. Suddenly you go, wow, I'm getting this gift, room changing, house, whatever. And then boom, baby in your arms. It was a big thing, definitely. And they went for a lot of counseling and stuff like that. They really did it the right way. And that is why I think that is, when you adopt, I think that is so important, and that you understand the psychology, like the stuff we're talking about here, generally of a child who is adopted into the family. You can't expect the adopted child, just to settle in like one of your kids. Or if you've got 3 kids who are adopted, each one is going to be dealing with their trauma differently, because to be separated from your mother, especially, is very traumatic, very, very traumatic. And that stays in the cells, and especially if there's trauma after that. But anyway, I think we've kind of like reached our time for today, which has been fun though. But I don't know if there's anything else that you want to just say before we end off, Kerri.
Well, for those that have been following my story, I actually found a sister, another one, and we've had contact. So everybody knows that I was adopted at birth. I found my biological mum and dad. My dad was married at about 17, and he had 2 children to that marriage, and I never knew where they were, anything about them. And she happened to do a DNA test and linked in with my other sister. I only found a couple of years ago, who did her DNA test and linked to me, found me that way. So now this sister, her daughter had given her a DNA test. She finally did it in February and linked in. And I got an email the other day saying, hello. So,
wow.
I know. So.
But that's the fun part of being adopted.
Yes.
You suddenly find all these siblings you never had, right? I mean, I look at my old siblings, it's like, go away, whatever. I want some big funny ones now. Are we sure Dad didn't have any like stray kids around? Don't I have some more siblings out there?
So I'm starting to lose count. I've gone from, I've got all up, I think it's like 10 half brothers and sisters now. Like, I have all these relatives that I'm connected to. So here's another one. She's the oldest, She's 69 and had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And yeah, she's told me a bit about herself. And yeah, I plan on meeting her. We don't know sure when. We're just exchanging emails at this stage and getting to know each other. But yeah, how crazy is this? I mean,
Congratulations. That is so
thanks,
incredible. Yeah, a
yeah.
lot of people
So,
also saying in the comments, Layla, congratulations. And I
oh,
agree,
thank
Layla. I think the same should apply for all that wish to have children, biological, absolutely.
yes.
Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to get that right, because then you're kind of like telling people what they can and can't do with their bodies. But I agree, it should be a standardized thing that parents actually go for parental coaching. Even before they get married, people have got to learn. But really, you know, when we know who we are and we are in love with ourselves in an amazing way, and we connected to God, the divine, we are guided. And you know, we kind of like know what to do and how to do it. Then I believe anyway, if you have a baby in your belly, you kind of grow. The baby grows. It's a part of you, you know. So, well, you should know anyway.
Mm.
But anyway, I understand that a lot of people don't. Anyway, guys, I look forward to continuing another conversation with Kerri in a month's time. We see Kerri once a month, yeah, on Aquarius Rising Africa. So until then, Kerri, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you and sharing these amazing stories and educating our viewers on the real life of an adoptee.
Thanks for saying that, Chantelle. Really appreciate you too. And Morné, I know he's there in the background. Thank you, Morné. He's a
Yeah.
lifesaver.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Take good care. We'll see you soon. God bless you all. Mwah. And thank you for everyone loving your comments. Enjoy them. Thanks a
Okay.
lot. Take care. We'll see you soon, guys. Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.